Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy B. And today, listen, man, we got someone today. I would argue I have wrangled, I have fished, I have tugboated our way to getting Mr. BoatyMcBoatFace.
How's it going? Yeah, you've been trying to get me to do an interview for a few years now,
Yes.
and reluctantly agreed.
Yes, I know. I have. I want to be honest, man. I feel like I just caught a Mewtwo in Pokemon, and then was able to actually have a sit-down conversation telepathically with him for a little bit. So, no, this is my pleasure, absolutely. And you are right. This has been a while because you and I have known each other for a little bit. At least conversated, here and there, back and forth. And I know there was a little hiatus, and obviously you coming back kind of a little bit longer than kind of Toxic's break. I know that was a little bit kind of short-lived, but aside from that, obviously when I had heard that you were coming back, I was elated. I was excited because I was like, man, this is someone who was a joy to talk to, you pretty integrated and engaged within the community, and obviously being a top player as well. It was nice to see people essentially not fully leave, yeah, even though there's probably always going to be a point where everyone, or those at a particular standing will eventually, just as time goes on. But it was very nice, in short, to see you come back. So Bodhi, again, man, you are, as of the 7th of November, and I got to check real quick on my stuff here and I guess it actually would still apply to as well for the 14th, I believe. Let me double check my face here on this, but I think, oh, my thing is still, my sheet's still loading. That's what happens when there's just so much data on it. But let's see. So as of the 14th, yep, you are still numero uno with Extinct, which is funny because he's like 80,000 power behind you, which is nuts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, we both could have trained more during the bow side of the KVK preparation, but almost feel like I've made it there by default. No intention to try and push there. It's always been one of the things that my power has gone up where needed. Really, I mean, you with the season, well, the selection of whatever choice you're a bit limited with your hospital size. So 30 million's the or 20 million is the limit really. And anything after that, and it's just you're just throwing away money, to be honest.
Yeah. So so obviously I want to get to a number of things on intro stuff, but I'm curious because obviously you already said that, so I'd like to maybe branch off a bit. There is when you looked at someone like Nephisto's power of climbing and climbing and climbing, even YY's main, right? And even though his second was obviously getting up there as well, probably around where Puppet's power was at, maybe a little bit more. But when you saw Nef's account and you're seeing, okay, 6, 7, 8, 9 passes a billion, to you, I guess based on that comment, you feel as though, okay, now it's kind of getting to a point where, like, maybe why do I need to go that high? I guess, is that generally how you view that, or do you think that there is some benefit?
Yeah, so I mean, there's absolutely no benefit apart from bragging rights to be in that
Okay.
size. Where I've invested rather than sort of is the true power is on artifacts and the pets, because I'd rather than having more troops, I'd rather hit harder. I'm sort of more focused about min-maxing everything in the account to get the best. I mean, I know we're talking about value, best value, but I mean, nothing about this game is probably value. Anything you spend on here is probably wasted finances. But yeah, just focusing on sort of hitting power rather than sort of like maximum bragging rights.
Okay. Which I think is fair. You're not the only person. I know there have been some others. I mean, I remember I had a conversation with Tiny once in VC with a few other people, and he was saying that, I'd rather have, like 10 100 mil accounts, or even 8 150 mil accounts, right? Something around there, versus, one just like ultra, Krakenish account. I guess, do you have a similar, I guess, thought process on that, where it's like, what, look, man, if we could have, four 250 mil accounts, and or like, where do you think is like a good range where you feel like, what, maybe it's better to kind of do that versus having just a massive Kraken account?
Yeah, so I think it all depends on resource seeding. Once you hit the limit for the elixir and the resource seeding, there's not really a huge amount of point pushing past that, because
Okay.
you can it's cheaper to sort of heal troops by resources, right? Anything else above that is kind of bloat. You don't necessarily need to use it, and I've only ended up really increasing in this size because of various great heights or other things in the past. It's never been an intention to sort of like reach up to sort of 600 millish, something like that. It's just ended up happening.
Okay. Okay. Well, look,
But I yeah, in a similar way towards sort of you've said there, it's better to have accounts that are approaching the maximum, that 2 mil a day at extra healing, or the 33 odd mil resource healing
Mhm.
limits, and then spend the money elsewhere. You're better off having exemplar artifacts and getting some pet coins and developing those pets.
Okay. Well, let me, because again, I want to come back around to this, but I'd love to get a little bit of an intro to you. So, have you played Kingdom Builders before? Is this your first introduction to a Kingdom Builder with Call of Dragons? And if you have played other ones before within the genre, what were they?
So I never played Rock, and I didn't do the Call of Dragons beta. Originally, the LMB guys were in a game called Warhammer 40K Lost Crusade, which was full of bugs, but it was a pretty savage game, because you could, if you let your shield drop down for one moment, regardless of what power you were, you could get completely zeroed, and you could go from having millions of troops to 50,000 overnight if you weren't paying attention. So it was a school of hard knocks there, and we formed a pretty good close knit group. We got brought to Call of Dragons in season one, and went into, I think it was server 49, with NTS, who'd done the beta, and we had no idea what we were doing. It took me like 2 or 3 days to work out that you could send two heroes out, um, and we really struggled for that season. We learned a lot from NTS and ended up working with them on season 1 plus, which was a great season. Really enjoyed it. A lot of respect for Mark and Were. Um, and yeah, that's where we came, where LMB started.
And yeah, man, that's interesting. I mean, going back to 49, especially obviously with it being, what you were at that point, 17, 18 kingdoms after global launched, and to see that NTS is kind of still standing. I mean, probably one of the few remaining kind of, OG kingdoms that, still for the most part, have their original kingdom intact. I know RK is still kicking too as well over in Kingdom 3, and there's a few others, here and there kind of within that first 100. But man, I was gonna say that, man, that's why was Mark and Ma there at the time, or was it other people?
Yeah, they were the original leadership.
Okay.
They came in from a different game, and they founded NTS, and they've continued it since. And I think a lot of respect has to go to those leaders who've been consistent in. You've also got TFS and EIS in that sort of bracket as well. They've been consistently sort of turning up season after season, and I think it does take a lot of work in the background. I don't think the amount of work that those guys put in should be forgotten. They do a lot.
Yeah, man. No, you were preaching to the choir. Curious, have you? I was going to say, I imagine you probably do not have as much time uh, to engage and or to participate, or maybe just not wanting to because of just knowing how much it is. At least on, have you done any like the management stuff, or is it? I mean, have you mainly just been like, nah, like listen, I'm just going to play. Like I know how much time goes into that. I just don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, before one of the things that we'll probably come on to later is where LMVR and everything. But I was part of one of the leadership team, and
Mm.
it was like a team rather than like almost like a round table sort of thing where you'd have one person who's the R down as the R5, but realistically everyone was roughly the same sort of weight when it came to sort of putting points across. Um, in NTS, I was just the liaison between the LNV players and the NTS management team. We were maybe one or two of us were R4s, and the rest of the guys were sort of fighters. But
Mm.
it does take a lot of your time, and I think so. Garius ended up being one of the R5s, and
Mhm.
he sort of turned around and say the first 45 to minutes to an hour of his day was going through DMs just before, not even doing anything, just responding to sort of
Yeah,
messages from members,
it is.
So it becomes almost like a job.
Uh,
It's one of those things where if you do have the time to put into it, then great. Everyone's really happy that you can do it. And yeah, I don't have the time, especially since we've got a 3-year old, and since that's come along, my time's been well, it's trying to focus on the family, really. You know what it's like.
oh yeah. Yeah, and I got three little ladies myself, so I can empathize absolutely. And of course, I don't know if I said this yet, but man, congrats on the on the first little one. I'm sure it's been a good an interesting learning curve. I know for my first
Yeah,
it was.
it's been rough, right? I think that's one of the things that nobody really talks about when they get kids, how tough the first few years are. Your perception of a good night's sleep goes. 6 hours becomes, a lie-in. I know you did reach out just after I was taking my break to say congratulations and stuff,
Oh, I
because
did.
that's
Okay,
one of the
good. I couldn't
I
remember.
took the time off to
Yeah,
focus on family.
yeah. Yeah. No, no, absolutely. You are, I mean, pretty much spot on. I think we got pretty lucky with our first three because all of them within the first 6 months were, doing like 4 to 6 hour stints, and then 6 to 9 months started to get pretty close to sleeping throughout the night. So I know we very much lucked out because I know some other people's stories are not as glamorous or fortunate when it comes to their kids' sleeping schedule. With some of them, I know kind of waking up every hour or two, and or somewhere close to that. So okay, so we get there. You get to this point where you're in 49 now. Walk me through what the transition was from kind of next stops. You're in 49. You're spending however long you are there. Where do you go next and why? And then how long are you there and so on until where you're at now?
So in that season 1 plus, when we were with NTS, we were split in between sort of two alliances, and at the end, we made the decision to continue our journey as LMV, and split from NTS, and we joined the server with GD and what then became Noir with Saturo. So it was the three alliances together. I mean, we were a pretty big kingdom. And obviously a lot of those players ended up staying with Noir, and they continued their path. But we had a couple of seasons. The next season after, we fought against BXS. I can't remember some of it was a while ago, some of the other alliances, but also against Nephisto,
Mm.
and SP and those guys. And it was a great season. It was a tough season, which we ended up winning. And there was a little bit of drama towards the end where Mephisto and the guys ended up switching over into Noir, and We weren't necessarily happy with that at the time because we didn't like the way it was adjusting the balance of the server. And so we then, as LMB, ended up going our separate ways to GD and Noir, and then we had a couple of other seasons. A potential failed merger with BXS, which was a shame. But at that point, we decided rather than one of the reasons why we were looking to merge was to share the workload of the management of the alliances because we've touched on it. It's a lot of work, and we
And
were all
at the same
struggling.
time, not everyone wants to step up as well too.
No, that's it. That's it. And I think it's one of those things where sort of we were struggling with some activity, and we sort of said, right, at this point now, we're the merger didn't work. We're going to sort of split and go sort of down the Merc route. So there was a group of sort of 10 to 15 of us that have ended up sort of moving around various alliances. And after the BXS season, I took a break. That was when I had my break, and the it was good, but it allows you to get some perspective, and I made the decision to come back and continue playing. But coming back, we ended up allying with MILF against RK and BDO, and that was another banger of a season. Obviously, there was a lot of bad blood in that KVK between BDO and some of the MILF players. Um, we ended up losing, but it was still a great fight. So I've never been that bothered about losing KVKs as long as it's been good fun. I don't like it being too one-sided. I'd rather have tough fights. And then as a group, we ended up moving to BDO, and we stayed there for about a year. And then a couple of seasons ago, we decided to mix it up and have a change, and we moved over to BTX, which has been great. Breath of fresh air. It's pretty relaxed there, and there's a management team that are doing the majority of things. They were a relatively new alliance, which was the result of a couple of mergers. And since going in there, I think we've brought a lot of experience from the higher KVKs and the older accounts, and there's been quite a lot of improvements there. So BTX have improved a lot. There was obviously a season with BTX against Echo, which was a steep learning curve, and I think one that a lot of the BTX members needed. We learned a lot that season, and the season after we came back a lot stronger.
Yeah, no, man, absolutely. I mean, I remember even just being able to sit down with SVP and Shiso when I did the post BTX interview with them, upsetting Echo, and obviously kind of how big that was. I mean, that was probably the second biggest thing in RoW League, I would argue, besides the MFD EIS upset, which was, I mean, just catastrophic. They just rampaged the community for a minute. But I know being able to kind of sit down with them, it was pretty clear to me, throughout the course of that interview that, there was a lot of kind of meticulous care. I would say when it came even just to the RoW League and the prep and everything that they were kind of putting into it in season one. And I think from some of the other conversations I've had with other people in the this inaugural season for RoW League, it has been refreshing to hear that even though it is the first season and some people thought, nah, okay, it's just going to be whatever it is. I mean, at least I can clearly tell that there is a lot of work that's being put in, and especially obviously with it probably mostly falling more on the management teams or even the road league management teams. That was definitely something I took away. From my conversation with them during that interview. So no, that's, I mean, I'm obviously happy for being able to find somewhere, especially. I guess it's always nice when you go somewhere new for the first time because there's kind of that renewed sense of motivation, of engagement, of wanting to participate, and everyone's kind of high, if you will, on good vibes, and positivity in general. So it's always nice to hopefully try and keep that going as well as long as you can. So you land here in '99. You
Yeah.
are and like I said, and you've been there a couple seasons now. Obviously, excuse me, with Road League itself going on, I would love to of course ask a question here. You guys have played one round so far. We are obviously currently awaiting right now a second, or sorry, not one round, but this is the first game of the finals, right? So you got second game that's coming up this Sunday, and I mean, I imagine. So before we even get to that, walk me through how. I know you've been playing in the matches. What is the experience in Road League from a player's perspective? Because I again, usually the people I'm talking to and I've sat down to interview have been mostly, I believe, management peeps. So walk me through what has your experience been like maybe just throughout like the preliminaries and then even before, even up until before the playoffs. What was the experience like for you? I mean, did you have high expectations? Did you have high hopes? Were you looking forward to how Roll League was going to play out, or was it more like, just it's how much different is it really going to be, right? Than just like standard row matches. What has that been like for you at least up until playoffs?
Yeah, so I mean, so the Row League's been a breath of fresh air in comparison to sort of the regular row, which I don't think anyone takes very seriously. We certainly haven't really worked on many strategies for row before that, which is probably one of the reasons why everyone was a little surprised that we've progressed as far as we have. But with the start of Row League, there's been a lot of people in the alliance that have put a lot of time into things. And one thing that they will do is review other matches, pick up and learn from them, which is an important thing. I think one of the advantages is that the account development that we've got is really good. We've got solid garrison leaders and rally leaders, and I think we work quite well as a team. So one of the things that's been focused on is trying not to reach too far, really, with the buildings, because the more buildings, obviously, you're garrisoning, the less presence you have in the field, and I think that leads to you losing those buildings and ultimately other objectives like pets or the stones, and then you lose the momentum and ultimately end up losing. But I think kudos needs to go to NFD for getting some really good start and and holding strategies, which I think the whole community's learned from. So sort of a big shout out for them to doing obviously a lot of testing. Then after that, once people have found out about the tree roots artifact, people started using it. I think the real thing about the league is that it's highlighted how important the start of the actual matches. So
Mm.
that's once at the start, everyone's pretty nervous, right?
I can
And
imagine.
after that, you settle in. It's one of those things where you basically you practice the start a little bit, and then the rest of the match is just interpreting what's going on in front of you and adjusting to how the your opponents are playing, really. Um, but that's where the leadership team, they know who they are. I've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of individuals who aren't necessarily leadership, but they're sort of taking a role inside the team who have put a lot of work in to test various things.
Yeah.
But my sort of role inside the Row League has been, so I've said before that I spend a lot of time sort of making my account as good as I can, and that'll be through constantly testing against the likes of Joker, um, to get the best talents that I can with the artifacts that I have. Because one of the advantages I have is that I'm not limited by troops, by heroes, by artifacts, so I can produce the best possible setup for me. Um, Maximizing the punching power of the account, and that also includes with the release of the custom row matches, we were able to go in and test various garrison and rally options. and that's where obviously the emergence of Garwood has come from as a garrison leader with Kuma. But then trying to find sort of counters to that and how you play to it. It's been really interesting. It's moved the game along, I think, quite well. There's a lot of ways that I think is going to end up affecting KVKs because you can go and test various things depending on what your opponents are doing. You can jump into RoW and potentially test against it.
Yeah. And the thing I like is that the thing that I think that one of the things that come out of that Garwood Kuma garrison is that the thing that I find fascinating and I appreciate, and you might like this, is that you have basically, a Gen 1 legendary that was to an extent, maybe getting phased out or was phased out in kind of the current meta, at least to a degree. And now you're seeing it get a massive amount of play in Row League. And so I guess to me, I kind of view it as it's nice to see that there are uses for legendary heroes, especially if they're very early on. Because Garwood, along with a number of others, they were some of the first few legendaries to come out when the game was launched. And so it's nice to me when I look at that and it's like, okay, it's kind of a little bit of a full circle moment here. Do you feel similar in that sense of that, what, like it's nice to see that some of these legendaries that maybe don't get as much play in the current meta, or at least at wherever the current meta is, or maybe in the last couple metas they haven't got a lot of play, but now all of a sudden they're seeing this resurgence of usage, and is that like a refreshing? Is again, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think a bit of nostalgia, obviously, with Garwood coming back to relevance. It would be interesting if they obviously continue to switch things up with various changes. But I think one of the reasons why Garwood hasn't been used, for example, in garrisons in game, obviously, is that as you're healing, it increases the number of sevs and devs that you're going to take. So by potentially using this in KVKs, you're going to end up filling your hospital quicker or taking more deads. So you need to be careful with that. Obviously, in RoW, you don't necessarily have, especially at this level where you're not limited by the troops, you don't have that same issue. But it's going to be interesting to see how they introduce various heroes and pets to combat the likes of Garwood's use in RoW as a way of, making it so that you can't just hold buildings indefinitely with reinforcement. That would be good. I mean, well, they're not going to make the changes now before the end of this RoW,
Yeah.
but for the next one.
What it sounds like you're saying is that the difference between like a KVK and a Row League garrison is that in Row League, you have the benefit or maybe disadvantage, right? I guess depending on what side you're on. You have the advantage or the disadvantage of a time limit versus in the KVK where sure you might have a time limit, but it's a very, very long, it's days worth, right? Potentially of a time limit. So it's almost like the difference between I'm okay sacrificing maybe more sevs or more deads if I can get a longer hold time versus in a KVK where maybe you don't care too much about a longer hold time for the most part and you're really looking to have better punching power. Would you say that's like a safe or an accurate kind of assessment of how you might look at it between the two?
Yeah, and I think KVKs are battles of attrition where you're trying to get rid of the opposition's hero stamina and
Yeah.
also fill their hospitals to the point where they can't fight on the field. You don't get that with RoW. With RoW, as long as you can just keep filling that garrison, you're going to hold it
Yeah.
and keep getting those points. And I think that's one of the things in RoW that BTX have done quite well, building control. Um, we'll take 5 or 6 buildings and the outposts, and even if we're not getting any stones, you'll see that score ticking up, and before you've spent too long, we're sort of 5k, 10k, and then you start taking risks, and if we can counter those, then we can extend that lead even further. In the KVKs, if you start making too many mistakes, it puts you back days. You really struggle to recover from those big mistakes of really negative trades.
No, absolutely. Tell me two things here for RoW. Obviously, before I maybe ask you something more specific about the playoffs, well, I guess maybe this next one might incorporate that as well. What's So give me two things here. First, what has been the most exciting match that you have played so far? And then what has been the match that maybe you felt like you learned the most from?
Um, so I think really the most exciting match, well, the biggest pressure thing we felt was against Echo, where I suspected that we would be able to sort of push it close. I wasn't sure that we would win. I didn't think that we could win. I thought we could win, but it was something where we would have to play well and disrupt well to get across that line. Really enjoyed the OMG game and obviously the 30 NA game. Actually, we've done a lot of training against 30 NA, which I think the community knows about, for the Echo game. And also for the OMG and for them to practice for their MDF round. So we actually know the teams know each other quite well from those. So a big shout out to the 30 NA guys who've been great all the way through this. We've not been sharing any sort of tests or anything like that,
Yeah.
but we've been trying things against them. But yeah, they go back to the most interesting game was definitely the Echo because I mean I've got a lot of guys that I know from Echo and I we know each other sort of fairly well from KVKs. So we took a bit of a battering a few seasons ago from Echo. So it was nice to just obviously pip them to the post and push past. And especially for a lot of the guys in the team who are and the subs who are light spenders, getting these additional legendary skins does actually mean quite a lot. So for the actual alliance, it's really beneficial because they're able to produce more troops at a lower cost. It's a shame, obviously, in the Relinquium, it's not going to count as an additional 2% attack, but I'm sure we'll get over that.
Gotcha. So, and I guess it kind of leads a little bit into my follow up there is obviously you, OMG, MFT 30 NA are the top four. So you guys do get the skin. So you're saying that a number of people within the alliance are very much valuing the skin. Like that is something that is important to them. Even if it may not be the most important thing, it is obviously incredibly important to them and something that is absolutely a goal amongst the player base, at least from what you've seen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because there's a lot of people who haven't been able to get legendary skins in great heights because they're having to pump out 50 to 60 million points to get it. So yeah, it is. Excuse me. It's going to be a big difference to a lot of those guys. So yeah, it's um it's something to be proud of as well. I think the first Row League, it's always nice to do well in the first Row League, and I think as well, BTX have had a lot of stick for various things in the past. So for BTX to be performing well in Row has been good.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Would on the note or the idea of being able to have these kind of legendary skin offerings. One of the things that I've kind of had this idea on, I actually got this from an anime that I watch called The King's Avatar, and it's kind of like this esport anime. It's very well done, but one of the things they do in there is they kind of take this page out of like MMO games, books, and like World of Warcraft and others in a sense where they on kind of the like non-professional side or the non-esports side, because a lot of these esports teams they have like their kind of typical like in-game clans and guilds, and some of them might be more focused on things like world records as an example, or world firsts. And so I've always thought it could be really interesting if they kind of took this idea of having, certain reward tiers and structures like they kind of are doing in RoW League. I wish maybe they would do it a little better, or maybe a little better next time for RoW League. But as far as just kind of expanding and having certain things, like for example, even with things like frames, it'd be really cool if like once you made it to playoffs, like you'd get your frame, but for each additional round you make it, the frame is like more decorative, or maybe it has a certain number, or maybe it's a certain color tone or palette to indicate right how far you've been able to make it. But one of the ideas I had was like, man, if they did something like, I've always felt that like the behemoths was something that hasn't really been taken advantage of yet, right? And I mean more so in the sense of like them coming out with a mode, and it's something where like once a month you'll have an opportunity to like basically do like elite raids, right? And whoever places in like the top 5 fastest clear times, right? Or whoever gets like world first for a clear, and or top 5 fastest times, and or top fastest clear time. Like something like that to me seems like that could be fun as well on the PvE side, but it's accessible. It's accessible to like all maybe like SOS kingdoms as an example. Any thoughts there on that, and like and maybe they would offer something as well, like there could be an exclusive skin or something to that effect. But like to me it just feels like they could be kind of, I guess if what I'm saying makes sense, almost kind of like taking this model
Yeah,
for a reward structure but applying it to other areas of the game where people do have interest. There's just nothing really there right now.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that the developers are really missing. Rewarding some of the skill elements rather than necessarily the pay to win elements. I've always been a big believer in supporting free to play and low spenders to sort of still continue to develop their account, because I think as soon as the free to play and the live spenders start leaving the game, then that's when the spenders start to go as well. So if you give them options and abilities to progress, it's one of those things. Either you spend a lot of time, or you're particularly good at something, or you've got a cheat code where you could potentially have a shortcut where you would pay for it, right? Um, and that's one of the areas where I think they've sort of made a mistake in the game. There's so many developments that I think could have gone a lot better, like with the introduction of the battle arena.
Mm.
Um, I felt they should have put it as a similar to sort of like a Call of Duty style um, system, like a
Oh, sorry.
mini
You
game
mean
inside
Battle Abyss? Or are we talking Tournament of Champions?
Battle
Okay.
Abyss.
Okay.
So games like that where you could have sort of custom games. So you introduce them in a similar way to the RoW League, but then you would choose whether it's a team deathmatch, last man
Mm.
standing, free for
Yes.
all of these things. But then also having the options of selecting to play with the heroes and the pets and various other things that you have, or hitting a default button which puts everyone with maximum, because that way you're able to get rid of the account development level. You're able to play at the same level regardless of what your account is. So you could
Yeah.
be a free to play player and you could play against the top players in the game, and know that the reason you're winning is because of your skill, or you're losing is because maybe you're not as good as them. And I think that's something they could do. And then as running sort of mini um, rewards as like monthly or yearlies for those various things, where the genuinely most skillful players are able to get items that allow them to develop their account. The ability to get more access to artifacts, or hero heads, those sorts of things, that are areas the developers should really be looking at. Because I think it's one of those things where I don't know if the horse has already bolted,
Yeah.
but I think if they're able to give more support to those guys, there's going to be less of an excess. Looking after sort of those players will allow you to um, maintain your player base and keep the game healthy for longer. And like you were saying about sort of like world records, I know you put first first T5 free to play, so you could reward various things like those things in there as parts of in-game rewards. So access to, I don't know, legendary skins that, I mean, they do make a big difference, giving especially mage players, because the majority of free to play or live spenders will predominantly have mage heroes. So some way I don't know, upgrading various skins, or you might be able to select multiple epic skins and upgrade them to a legendary of your choice, and getting rid of some of the RNG factor of some of the items like pet regeneration, so that you're able to have access to sort of decent pets so you can compete. Otherwise, you're just going out in KVKs and just getting wrecked by these max accounts, and that's no fun. People will just leave the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, my view on it, and I've said this a couple times before, is for me it's kind of it's two pronged. Number one, I very much feel it just takes too long to unlock all T5. And that's, to me, that's such a baseline. Like, we're talking very vanilla here, especially if you're a free to play. Even if you get to a point where you unlock all T5 units, you still have to consider the fact that those players are going to be severely underwhelmed or underwhelming on the field when it comes to every other aspect of account development, right? They're not going to have as many heroes. They're not going to have as many max pets. They're not going to have as many maxed artifacts. Uh, and so, to me, like right now, right, like Sorrow and Grabby basically have set the record at 381 and 382 days, and that's just for the first T5 unlock, right? Fastest time right now for a full T5 unlock is 580 days. But Ragnar was the one who set that. And the other ones, there's like a group of people kind of between 650 and 700. But then you have another group that's between like 800 and 900. And, then you look at like Panda, who's another person, he's like at 1100 days. I mean, you're talking like multiple years at this point just to get to, like, to me, that's just to get to like the next starting line. And my view on it is I feel that you should have all T5s unlocked. Like, you should have the potential to do it, right? If you grind, you should have the potential to have all T5s unlocked within a year. I do not think that that is any kind of a hot take. I don't think that's some kind of asinine ask at all. But I do think it helps the free to play out, where it then lets them start to allow themselves to really prioritize, really focus priority wise on what those next things are that they need to do, without necessarily having to also focus on, getting to this point of having, again, I don't know if you have a similar feel or if you're like, no, the
I
timing
have
is
a
fine with it.
slightly different take, and I get
Mm,
your point. It is those goalposts are quite a long way away. I think we're at the point now where if you're coming into the game fresh, you're so far behind in account development
yeah.
that you're never going to catch up. So you're going to be competing against those people who will come in at the same time as you. But if your goal is to compete in the top KVKs, when you get there, you'll sort of suddenly realize that the pets, which make such a massive difference, you just haven't had the time to develop them to 3 stars. So I mean, one idea, and this could be completely ridiculous, it would be that you'd have the option of joining um, a unpopulated server in the areas of like the G2 or the G3 pools and get a head start. So rather than joining at zero, you'd have the ability to join and have, let's say, all the heroes at, I don't know, 50% or something like that, and get 500,000 of each troop or something like that. Some way of drawing players in so that they're then um, able to develop and compete. Because unless you do that, then they're just not going to be able to catch up, and it's steadily going to drop off, and you'll
Yeah.
have the older players who will obviously start to leave. You've got to keep that influx of new players. And I think one of the things about Call of Dragons is that the PvP is really good. It's the strategies that are needed for it, and even little things like how you use frost rings or something like that. That if you're a lower spender, you can send out a venom lizard and frost ring and buy your team some time to affect the match in some way. But yeah, just some way of bringing those new players in. Do you know what I mean? Giving them sort of like an average level account that they can then actually play.
Yeah. You know, it's the I think they call it the power creep is what I know some people have referred to it as. And you know, for me, I think I absolutely see where you're going with this. It would almost be the same. It would almost be kind of a similar take where if you like, for example, instead of having new players, instead of advocating, or for example, maybe not saying it otherwise, but having maybe like an established kingdom that says, listen, if you're a brand new player, you can come and start here, right? And you can come and play here, and we'll help you develop your account. We will assist you in being able to get you into like a an alliance that's already has like max tech, you know, that already has some spenders, so you'll kind of be able to start, you know, benefiting from those things as well. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, just something, looking at it in a different way rather than having to start from scratch.
yeah,
Because if you don't switch it up, then things are potentially just going to continue sort of dropping off.
yeah, no, absolutely. And you
We
know
always
what?
get innovative with it and think, how can we sort of bring players in and actually give them the opportunity to, because everyone joins the game and wants to play at the top league, or sort of they might have aspirations to get there, and you give them the opportunity of doing that without spending hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think even on the like for me, even something like on the gold chest side, right? Like one of the things I've even mentioned before, which is, you know, why not have every single hero available in the gold chest, and then like as you max one out, it just disappears. So then like the percentages obviously would, you know, generally increase a little bit, not necessarily the flat percentages that are already there, but that you would have more of a chance now to get other heroes and the one would be taken away. But at the same time, the other thing is that like you would still allow the spenders to obviously have the access, right? So it's like the bundles and things like that, and the areas that they would show those new release heroes would show up in would still be the same. And you could even do a delay. Like let's say when these new G5 archers come out, right? Maybe you don't add them into the gold chest for like at least one full KVK cycle, right? So you give people maybe like 2 months or so, but then after that, right, they would get added to the gold chest as well. So at least that way, you know, even just doing something like that, to me, like even like to me, that's very small because it's not like free to play. It's not like even if you did that, free to play players all of a sudden are going to be able to start competing with high spenders, but it at least would help them to get to a point where, because to me, this is how I look at it. I look at it like this: a free to play player is not caring, or their priority is not to have as many maxed out heroes, as many maxed out artifacts, as many maxed out war pets, as a mid high spender. Their priority is to get to five, which is for your 5 marches, right? That's their priority. First, beginning, middle, and then and last. Right now, obviously, anything more than that is great, but that is their initial focus: is how do I get my ideal 5 march? And even if you did, like, even if free to plays were able to get, you know, 10 legendary heroes maxed, have 5 war pets maxed, have 5 artifacts maxed, I can't tell you the joy that that would bring to someone who's a free to play. Now, will they be able to last as long as someone who's mid high heavy spending? No, of course not. But would they at least be able to, for that brief moment, compete a bit more, if not closer-ish? Absolutely. And like
And that's
to
it.
me,
I
that's the
suppose
world of
what we
difference.
want, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What were you saying? Go ahead.
So yeah, as I was saying, and that's what we want. We want close fights.
Yeah.
I think maybe given the option of, let's say you've got, like you were saying, you've got your five pairs of heroes. As the new heroes come out, if you've got the ability of um, selecting one of those heroes and getting back 70% of your hero frags that you've got from them, and
Yeah.
then putting that into the new one, although it's only 70%, it allows you to keep up with the other guys a little bit.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you know what's funny is, to me, and I'm curious what you're going to think on this one. I just thought of this based on what you just said. Is it would almost be interesting if they gave people who haven't spent any money like some unique perks. Like an example would be being able to get 100% return on your hero investment, right? As an example. But like maybe if you spend money, it's like, okay, maybe you get an 80% return, right? Or something, something like that, where it's maybe it's not massive, so to speak, and maybe you could think about how to apply it in other areas. But like that would even be interesting. Is if your account comes up and it's like you haven't spent any money, then you get like some of these passive perks that are that maybe you would consider them to be kind of like catch up mechanics in a sense, right? But it's like as long as you stay free to play, like you'll have some of these perks for the duration of however long it is until you don't until you spend some money. Um, but yeah, that was something I literally just thought of
Yeah, but
when you said
the
that.
longer you, sorry, the
Yeah,
longer you play, the more likely you are to start investing
yeah,
a little bit in the game. You might just do the daily pack for the heroes. But even
yeah,
that, if you've got a million players doing that, that's a pretty good return. I mean, obviously we don't have a million people playing the game, but if you were to sort of like build up and if you look after those players, they'll stay there because the other options are going to other games that are potentially not looking after the player base as well.
yeah,
Uh, and we've got really good PvP style in this game. So I think there's definitely potential. They can sort of turn it around a little bit. Um, but I mean, there's lots of development I think they need to do in things like the KVK systems, like the matchups. So in the regions,
yeah,
having the ability to choose the starting regions. I mean, obviously there's been some drama recently with end of season rewards, and it's such a ridiculous thing, really, to have to fight over. Really, it should be that whoever holds the dragon has the option of sharing the dragon rewards with multiple different alliances,
yeah,
and you might find that those alliances who are having sort of great fights with other alliances share it with their opponents. Why couldn't they? The ability to share it with those alliances that have performed well. I don't know. To me, it just seems like a no-brainer. But the
yeah.
ability to either come to an agreement to choose your starting region, or if you don't come to an agreement, then you could have the option to tick random. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some way of doing it so that we don't get various zones where after the diplomacy's done, there's no fighting. Everyone wants some fighting, and if you're right next to alliance, you're forced to do a little bit of merit trading just to buy out your pet stores. Um, I mean, it's just I'd hope it would be a small change that they could make for the next KVKs. Why not?
And even taking what you just said a step further, going prior to diplomacy concluding, it very much can affect how diplomacy even plays out because some people will look at the map, and if you've already had a predetermined starting zone, people will limit the potential options they would have on who they would team with based on will they get a zone 2 fight, will they not get a zone 2 fight, how is zone 3 going to potentially play out, and how many times have we seen that happen? And then it's like, okay, well, this kind of sucks because now it feels as though it feels as though the KVK is now already being limited on what the potential could be for it throughout because of how management is looking at this, right? Because you don't have the option to be able. Now, we do know that is coming with the ability to choose your starting zone, right? We know that they've stated that. Obviously, that's not here yet. I think most people probably thought it might have, if not should have been here already. But we know that at least it's coming whenever it does obviously arrive. So I absolutely agree there on that front. I'm curious, how much have you thought about the age duality season that's out now? And I know I did a video talking about the portals, and I know I'm sure it's probably getting around to some other people if they've either watched that or if they were already kind of looking and investigating into it. But what are your kind of initial thoughts, some early impressions here on age duality?
I haven't had a huge amount of time to look at it. I
Okay.
work a week on, week off, and I've just got off from my week on. It's been pretty full on. So I need to read up on it.
Okay.
But the season that we're in at the moment, seems like a good season for the bees. It's good that everyone can make it through to the final zone. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got a huge amount to add to that, just because
Okay.
I haven't
No,
done
that's
the I haven't
fine.
done
I
the
just, I
We've
just
been
wanted to
so
ask just
focused
in
on
case.
yeah, we've been so focused on row as well that it's almost like KVK's taken a second sort of place at the moment.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. I will say about the new map. To me, I agree there as well. I think the number one selling point for this season map is the fact that everyone has an opportunity to make it to the final zone. So I mean, no matter what, the expectation there is that, people are going to be chomping at the bit, regardless of how much action they get in zone 2 or zone 3. Now, as far as, at least for me on the portals, again, without kind of going too deep into that, my general feel is that, we'll see how that plays out, because I think that there are some potential advantages and disadvantages that can play out depending on a kingdom's preparation, and then at the same time kind of how they're being chosen to prioritize player usage within the portals. But like I said, I do think that at least this is like the first time that they've like swung and have done a map, with the exception of the Bellerin season 2 map, which, that had like the frost dragon there on the 2 levels, and like if you had your team on the west or the east side, everyone was basically guaranteed to make it to the final zone, right? That was that infamous TFS Noir season. And so, at least on that front, this is the first map that actually has guaranteed everyone has been able to make it to the final zone. So I at least appreciate the leap that they're taking, and, the continuous improvements or variations of testing and trial and error on KVK maps that we know they've been doing since season 1. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see how the the portals play out, and obviously, to what you said, how the A's feel about it going in. I'm curious. You mentioned something earlier, because I know we're already getting a little short on time here. So maybe I got one or two last minute questions for you. You did mention previously something about like matchups. I'm curious. Do you like this idea of like the team up phase, or do you like the idea more of the system itself? Just saying, listen, we're just going to pair the matchup, which for the most part has pretty much been, at least in the top KVKs, right? For the most part, has been like the top 6, the next 6, the next 6, right? Going top down, right? Maybe there's some variance here or there. And obviously for me, my biggest thing with the team up phase is that I just wish that they were only teaming up A's with A's and B's with B's and C's with C's and so on and so forth. I just don't know how much of a fan I really have been from these past few A and B mix ups. But
Yeah,
I'm curious I'm curious how you feel about that.
I think the thing is that the team up phase can be pretty rough for the bees or those people with lower accounts, because I have done a little bit of fighting previously with T4s against T5, so I do appreciate how tough it can be. One small mistake and that's it. You're just dead instantly. It's very unforgiving. So with the bees, there is a lot of pressure, and I don't know how much enjoyment they potentially get from it. Could they get more enjoyment if they were against other bees? I think in the whole, I generally tend not to complain about sort of all these things, because at the end of the day, this is what it is, and we can't really change it. From the seasons, I think I probably prefer the system deciding matchups rather than the team up phase, because there can be so many factors in the team up phase that don't necessarily get sort of factored in. I think sometimes some of the team up phase matches can be a bit one sided. Um, with the with the sort of like the automatic one, we all like to complain, but at least we can just complain against the system. And as long as the diplomacy sort of is reasonable, and you've got the ability to switch starting positions or something like that, set starting positions, however you want to work it, that has the ability, I think, to provide the most interesting KVKs. Um, so from that sort of point of view, I'd rather see that rather than potentially a matchup.
Yeah. No, 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 I'm absolutely with you. I think if they were to do the next, whatever the next map is going to be, or the next season, or the next, I guess KVK storyline that they either introduce or people select, if it ends up being one that is not the team up phase, I would like for them to do it where it's like, okay, they'll match up the kingdoms going into the KVK, and then the kingdoms at that point, or they say like, okay, we're going to put you guys on team A, we'll put the other ones on team B, and now it's just a matter of you guys figuring out and going through like the starting zone selection process, because assuming hopefully that'll come out maybe in the next season or two. So it's like if the system pairs you, okay, I'm okay with them saying like, look, we're going to put these 3 kingdoms on this team, these 3 on this team, and then everyone now has to go ahead and go through like a starting zone selection phase at that point. I
Yeah.
mean, because the other way is that you're just like doing the reverse team up. Even if you do something like, okay, well, the system will put the 6 kingdoms in there, but now we're going to let you guys figure out who's going to be on which team, and then you have like a team up selection phase. So it's just, I feel like it could end up being the same, but maybe it wouldn't, because if you know that you're going to be able to select your starting zone, then that could be interesting. I would maybe be okay seeing that done kind of both ways, where it's like the system pairs 6 kingdoms in there, and then you go through a team up phase, and then you go through a starting zone 1 selection phase. That could be interesting. And then the other side of it could be the system pairs the 6 kingdoms. They also make the teams. They put 3 one, 3 on the other, and then you do the starting zone 1 selection phase. I think either of those could be interesting to see.
I think one of the things the developers could do more of is reaching out to the player base and saying, look, how do you want the KVKs to be run?
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
and
good point.
then we've only got ourselves to blame, right?
Yeah,
We all
yeah.
have to look in the mirror and say, it's all your fault, mate.
No, true, and that would be interesting, right? I would be all for that if it was something like where they reached out to like all the kings and queens, maybe in like SOS, or like maybe if they're like above 10 bill power or something like that, or whatever threshold they're going to utilize, and then they reached out, or even if it's like the Hall of Kings group, and they say, listen, we're going to ask you guys a number of questions, right, in regards to KVKs. We'd love to know, gets your feedback, and then yeah, you ask them those things, and then once you finish asking them, if you decide to implement any of it, you make sure that in your announcement you say, listen, this is what the people asked for, right? Like this is what the kings and queens stated that they wanted. This is what we're going to try out, and then we'll collect feedback and assess from there.
Yeah.
I'd be totally
The
fine with
key
that.
thing is putting out like taking on an initial idea, returning to us with, okay, from your suggestions, this is what we're thinking, and then giving, because there's some pretty smart players in this community.
Yeah.
I'm not including myself in that, and they'll be able to look at these things and say, if you're going to do that, you need to look at these things and factor in sort of these things which will make a difference.
Yeah.
So sort of like having it sort of community led would, I think, really help with the development and sort of retention of the player base, really.
Yeah, and it could also have the possibility of making them more money too as well, because people are more satisfied. So,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, I know we're getting to the end here. Give me one thing you'd like them to add into the game that's not in the game already. One thing potentially you would like to see changed for the better, and maybe something, if anything at all, that you just think doesn't need to be in the game.
One thing that I think I'll start with the thing to change, and it's Battle Arena. I think it really does have the potential to be a great game. Sorry, a great part of the game. Make it so that the kills are included with the sevs, because at the moment it's the sevs, and it's weird. I don't understand that, but also you end up with a huge hospital from it as well. So there's less engagement during KVKs because people are worried about filling hospitals or whatever. But just, I don't know, just putting more customizable options in Battle Arena. Something that I think they should remove. Hmm, that's a tough one. Do you know what?
And listen, if not, I'll just take something you think that you'd like to see them add that isn't already in the game.
Something I don't know. I think one of the things that they need to sort of to look at doing potentially is addressing all of the sort of top players ending up sort of in the same sort of alliances. And I don't know if it's one of those things potentially that is workable, but potentially reducing the migration, the total number of the migration score per server,
Mm,
reducing alliance sizes down to 150 players or even 120 players, so that you don't have as you'd have more powerhouse, and I think that would probably help with the longevity of the game if you're having to split the player base up over multiple different servers. It could lead into more options for matchmaking.
Yeah.
More passes, which will give more pass opening times, and PvP.
Mm.
But I've really got to go.
No,
Really
you're
don't think.
fine. Listen, lastly, any shout outs, declarations, or shots you'd like to fire, Bodie?
No, just a big shout out to obviously all the guys in the LMB team, those who are with us at the moment, and those who are in other alliances at the moment. Also, to the guys at BTX, the guys at BDO, also, and NTS as well.
Awesome. Well, no, man, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate the time, man. I will leave you to it, man. This has been such a pleasure. And let us know down below who you'd like to see us interview next. We're out. As always, until next time, I'll catch you later.